It's been called the Directory of Kings. Azure Active Directory has had a facelift. It's now known as Microsoft Entra, but I like to think of it as Azure AD 2.0. How does it work? What can it do? Stay tuned. You've come to the right place. Hello my fellow YouTubers, Andy Malone, Microsoft MVP. In this episode, I thought I would take a look at what I'm dubbing Azure Active Directory 2.0, or as you might know it as Microsoft Entra. It's going through tons of changes, and I must admit the new look kind of admin center is looking pretty good these days. So I thought I would take you through all of the different settings, really so that you know exactly where everything is. I've got a really nice demo here, so make sure that you stay tuned to the end because I guarantee you'll definitely learn something. Now, if you've not subscribed to the channel, we love subscribers. So go ahead, bump that subscribe button up there, ring that bell, and you'll be notified of new videos. And if you've got questions, comments, not just about this, but in fact, any of my other sessions, then I love those. So get those down below. And if you enjoy the session, please bump that like button up there. It really does make a difference to my channel. All right, so I think without any further ado, let's jump in with the demo and let's start to learn. Enjoy. So I'm going to kick off here in the Microsoft Entra Admin Center, and as you can see, we have got three main components here. Now, Entra consists of three products. First is Azure Active Directory, Permissions Management, formerly known as CloudNox, and we've also got Verified ID here. So the first of these then is Azure Active Directory. And I'm going to go into the overview page, and this has recently been updated, and what used to be lots of tabs is now all rolled up nicely on each pages. Please note that the look and feel of it is starting to look more and more Microsoft 365-ish, and again you can expand and contrast the menus accordingly. So rather than having lots and lots of tabs, Microsoft have now grouped everything in kind of a way that makes things so much easier to find here. Now, in the overview section here, this is where you can add in, again, we've got some shortcuts here, users, groups, enterprise applications, and you can also register an application here as well. If you're working with multiple tenants, as many of you are, and I did a session on this, so check it out on my YouTube channel. I'll put the link below, by the way. You can manage your multiple tenants here. To find out what's new, we go here. Again, you can also switch on the preview features, and this can also be found in the preview hub in the settings page. Yes, so this is the preview hub, and in here you can find out what are the latest features, and there's a few features here that are currently in public preview, and you can switch those on or off accordingly. Okay, now on top of that, we have a number of different tabs here. So the overview just gives you a generic overview of all of your Azure Active Directory. You get your own news feed, who you're currently logged on as, and again down at the bottom here, you have got shortcuts. So rather than having to navigate all of those menus, you can create groups and users directly from here. Also, if you want to search for anything in your tenant, you can search here. So for example, if I had a user, for example, called Jean-Luc Picard, I can just type in the user's name here and off it goes and it finds that for me. So again, that's a real time saver. In here, we've also got various monitoring. So this, again, just keeps you up to date where you are with performance. Again, there are a number of cards here, or there will be a number of cards here that you will be able to configure. So it shows you how many sign-ins that you've had and so on. Going into the properties page here, again, this is where you could change the name of your tenant here. Again, you can change your language. And very importantly, especially for things like PowerShell, you've got your own unique tenant ID that you might want to take a copy of. Again, you can fill in these other features here, which is fine. Again, you've got Azure Access Management as well. And again, you can switch this on if you want to. You've also got, this always gets people, the security defaults has now moved into the properties page here. So a lot of people kind of miss this. And essentially what this does, this is perfect. Let's say, for example, you're a support professional, you've got a customer and they've just signed into Microsoft 365. So you haven't set up conditional access, you haven't set up any security policies or anything like that. This is perfect. So by switching this on, it will set up a set of default settings for your user. It's almost like a baseline security plan, if you will. Now, the downside is if you already have set up security features for your user, you've set up conditional access, you've set up policies and so on, by switching this on, it will wipe those out. So be very careful with that. All right. Okay, so next we have got recommendations. I love this. So again, Microsoft will make regular recommendations. It's a little bit like, you know, secure score and so on. So again, things like performance recommendations. Again, this is just a new tenant, so there's not much going on here. Now, as I mentioned a number of times on my channel, Microsoft are moving all of its learning content, or have moved all of its learning content, to Microsoft Learn, or learn.microsoft.com. And in here, you have got access to various videos and training courses here. So if you want to learn Azure Active Directory, there's a whole bunch of tutorials here that I think you'll find useful. So coming down to the users pane, again, we've got all users here. You've got deleted users. So when you delete a user account, it will generally delete them and pop them in the recycle bin for up to 30 days. That's, of course, unless you have that user on legal hold. Again, I can click into Adele here. There's been a few changes recently. So I can come into the Adele's features here, and you can see what access she's got. I can view her sign-in logs if she's interacting with any third parties. I can edit her properties either by clicking on this button here or this button here, and it will take me into edit mode, and I can then edit the user. You'll also notice that in here, it's showing me the useful things like the last time the user signed in, and you can also change the type of user here. So you can see that at the moment Adele is a member in this Azure Active Directory, but you can also classify her as a guest account as well. This is particularly useful if Adele's leaving the company, let's say, and she's maybe coming in as a contractor. You'll also notice that we have quite a number of fields that are kind of related to the user's workplace. And also, if you're in hybrid mode, you'll notice that we have a number of fields. So if you've deployed things like Azure AD Connect, and you'll start to see these fields filled in for you. You've got, again, you can go through each of the areas here, and you can fill in this information here, settings, language, you've got those on premises, or you've just got the generic properties there. Please note that when you create a new user now in Microsoft 365, so again, if I just scroll back here and go back into my overview and go into my users again, the guest user account is missing. So now, instead of creating a guest user, you're essentially inviting an external user. So I can go ahead and send out an invite to an external user. It might be a customer or a colleague or somebody like that outside the company. So that's a really nice feature here. Please note that we've also got access to the various different logs here. So again, it's all about saving time and speeding things up. You've also got access to the user settings here. So again, you'll find that there is the same menu options. And again, you just choose the option that is comfortable for you. So here in the user settings, we can choose, are you going to allow the users to register applications? Are you going to restrict the admins who can create tenants? Are you using LinkedIn integration as well? You can keep users signed in. So they show the options for the user to keep them signed in. I'm sure you've seen that, when you log into Microsoft 365, it says, do you want to keep me signed in? Again, that may or may not be an option for you. If you were in a bank, maybe not so. You can also manage the external user collaboration settings here, although I will admit that they put it in a much easier place. You've now got a complete category of external identities. So everything to do with external identities is now here. So coming into groups, and here in groups, this is where I can, of course, manage all of my groups. So I can create a new group here, and again, just same as before, I can change the name of the group, decide what type of group it's going to be. If you can use an assigned group, so assigned means that I can manually assign a member to that group, and I can also assign an owner. Owners are particularly useful, so if somebody leaves the group or the group's deleted, the owner can go in and recover some of the data. In terms of authentication types, because this is a security group, you can add in either assigned, dynamic users, or dynamic devices. And dynamic membership is essentially based on a role. So if I change this group to become a Microsoft 365 group, and I call this, let's say, Tromso Accounts, and I can come into the accounts here, I can put in a description. You can see it puts in an email address. AD, do you want to assign an AD role to this account? So later I can assign, for example, an admin account to this if I want to. Please note that this only works with assigned. So if you change this to dynamic, this isn't going to work anymore. All right. For the purpose of this demo, I'm going to show you a dynamic user. Now you'll notice that dynamic devices are only available in security groups. So I can come in here and I can choose a dynamic user. So one really cool feature is that I can go ahead and assign a label, a sensitivity label here. So if you're using labeling and classification, this is a super cool feature. Please note that there's one little bug with this interface though. You can't remove it. So if I accidentally click onto this, you can't remove it. You need to do it in Microsoft 365. I can also assign an owner to this group. So again, I've just got a admin user here. So I'm going to select that. And I'm going to say dynamic membership. So I'm going to put in a dynamic rule. So I can choose a property here. So I can say, hey, if the city equals Tromsø, and you're probably wondering where Tromsø is, it's in Norway. And I can even add another one and say, hey, if the department equals, let's say, accounts. Okay, so a dynamic rule, and this is called ABAC, attribute-based authentication. And if I click onto that, now go ahead and create this group. I have now created a dynamic group. So if I go back to any of my user accounts here and just scroll down, I can go into Jean-Luc's account here. I'm a big Trekkie, of course. Everybody knows that. And I'm going to go and edit the properties of Jean-Luc. And all I need to do is come down here and I can change this. He's Tromsø, so he's in Tromsø already. What department is he going to be working in? So again, I can put in the department. At the moment he was in sales. I'm going to change him so he's now in accounts. And immediately now, Jean-Luc is now a member of the accounts group in Microsoft 365. And of course, that particular Microsoft 365 group, you could also promote that to become a Microsoft team as well. Okay, so again, really powerful, really useful set of features there. Okay, so all the group features are here. So please note, again, you can set restrictions on who can create groups. Again, you can also set in here, you can put expiry dates on certain Microsoft groups here. So a Microsoft 365 group, you can put an expiry date, and that means within 30 days of this date. So with 30 days within 6 months, if nobody is using that, it will then get deleted. Now, if it does detect, if AI does detect traffic in the group, of course, it just resets the counter and everything carries on as normal. The other things that you've got here, you can do a naming policy. So things like group naming, you can do a prefix. So OSL sales, OSL marketing, and a suffix. So sales OSL, marketing OSL, and so on. You can, just while I leave it, the other thing that you've also got here is access reviews. And access reviews is great because you remember when we used to have classic systems in the past, and you made somebody a member of a group, and then 2 years down the line, you would go, oh my goodness, they're still a member of that. So here you can do a regular access review, and it's essentially, do they still need access to that resource? Okay, so Microsoft groups there. Now, also please note that we've also got any devices. So I don't have any here, but if you're deploying any devices in your organization, both hybrid devices, or you've got Intune in there, you'll see a nice list of all your devices here. And again, you can manage device settings. And if they're Windows 10 or 11 devices, you can also store the BitLocker recovery keys here. So if something horrible goes wrong with your devices, you can recover them. So that's really nice. In applications, of course, enterprise applications, we don't go to our local computer store to buy apps. Everything's in the cloud these days. So you can come in here, you can say, hey, I want to go out and purchase an application. And this, of course, Azure is a multi-cloud platform. So you can buy apps from any of these vendors, and you get a little selection here. But seriously, guys, there are thousands of apps that you can choose from. Okay, so once you've found the app that you want, essentially just add that app in. So for example, here is Zoom. You go in and you add it in. I can assign it to certain users and groups. You can do things like single sign-on. So are you going to use SAML? So are you using ADFS or something like that? Or do you just want a simple password-based one? Or do you just want to link it to the user account? So you can do something like that. Okay, so you can also make the app self-service, and this is particularly useful for, let's say, you've created an app for the public and you're using consumer-based authentication. Again, that's great, but check it out. Not only have you got the app here, but you've also got access to things like conditional access here as well. So again, you can create a conditional access policy. So basically you're saying, these users can only access this app if they're on a certain device in a specific location. Absolutely awesome. All right, so check out the applications. One cool thing to definitely note is in enterprise applications, one thing I always get asked is, Andy, what if we have an app on premises? Can I still use that? Absolutely. So go ahead, you can download the connector. This is called the app proxy, download the connector to a local server where the app is, and essentially once it wakes up, once it's active, you then just configure the app, and the apps are then published in the app launcher, or as I call it, the waffle, and the apps basically just appear down here. So any kind of third-party apps you can see would appear in the app launcher. That is worth its weight in gold, by the way. All right. So that's the app launcher. Roles and admins. So here, when you create a user account, of course, it's basically a user. So the user doesn't have any kind of administrator privileges. So what we have here in the Azure Admin Center are literally hundreds of different admin roles. Now, when you first look at these, it can be a little bit overwhelming and you think, oh my goodness, I don't need to remember all of these, do I? Well, actually, no, you don't, is the shortcut answer. But if I, for example, I've got a Teams administrator, right? So I don't want to grant global admins to too many people, because global admin is a super powerful role. So you tend to make it more role-based. So again, Teams is an example here where you have multiple different roles. So an overall Teams admin would get that role, but maybe you've got a junior person within the IT team who is just responsible for configuring Teams devices, let's say. So you can grant them Teams device administrator role. Get the idea? So it's a super feature, by the way. So again, we also have other really useful roles. So if you want to give the user the rights to add, configure users and groups and license them and so on, and you don't want them to be a global admin, consider making them a member of the user admin role. Again, really nice. So anyway, definitely check out that. Billing, I think you can pretty much guess what that is. I mentioned the preview hub. If you want to add in your own custom domain name, you can do that here. So again, and I've covered that in previous sessions. The other thing, mobility. So my tenant, I've got an E5 and an EMNS license. So you can see that for mobility, I've got Microsoft Intune or Endpoint Manager configured here. Now, in the old portal, it was security, and this is now the protect and secure portal. So you can come in here and you can configure conditional access policies as well as identity protection. And again, I've covered all of these topics in depth in recent sessions. You also, this is kind of cool actually, you also get an identity score as well. So it shows you get like a score. It's not so good, is it really? But it's definitely making some recommendations. And essentially, don't use or do use multi-factor authentication. So multi-factor authentication, of course, can reduce the number of password-based attacks on your system. All right, so they need a device. You might need a biometric, but it stops just simple password hacks by up to 99%. Seriously switch that on. Okay, so definitely take the recommendations in here. Other things, you can also set up multi-factor authentication here, and you can choose the different types of authentication. All right, so again, we have the one-time password. Currently in preview, we've also got certificate-based authentication. You've got voice call authentication. You can go in and you can deploy, for example, the Microsoft Authenticator app, or even FIDO keys. You know that for if you're using things like passwordless authentication. We've also got a password reset options here. So you can enable self-service password reset, and you can basically select groups of users. This is particularly useful if you've got premium Azure AD and you've got Azure AD Connect and you've enabled password write back. This would then write that back to your local Active Directory. You've also got things like the identity governance, and I mentioned access reviews and privileged identity management. That is a way that you can grant just-in-time access to admin roles. Okay, all of this, by the way, I've covered in sessions, and you can find those videos on my YouTube channel, typically in security and compliance or identity. This is really nice to see. Everything to do with external identities. So I can come in here and I can set up things like cross-tenant access settings. I can set up external collaboration settings. This is really important, by the way, especially for security. So what level of restrictions do you want guests to have? Do you want them to have full membership rights in Teams, for example, or just limited access? So definitely check out these menu items here. Really important. Okay. User experience, you can, when you log into Azure or Microsoft 365, you can customize this. So you can add your nice corporate background, you can bring in your own images, you can custom the text. That's kind of nice. And this is called company branding, by the way. This is a premium feature. If you've been looking for Azure AD Connect, so if you're trying to connect to an on-premises environment, this is getting even simpler. Now you've got two main products, so just Connect Sync. So this, you'll know Connect Sync is the traditional Azure AD Connect. I can come in here, download it, deploy it, or you can use the Cloud Sync tool. So if you want to know more about this, then check out my identity playlist, and all of these topics are covered there. All right. Finally, you have got monitoring and health. And this is where you can come in and you can monitor all the sign-in logs. You can also monitor things like audit logs, and you can really get a feel for really what's going on. And obviously, we're looking for failures to log in. Was it a particular user? Where was the user coming in from? So you could then determine whether it's a suspected hacker or something like that. All right. Again, log analytics, workloads, things like that, really useful. I love this as well, usage and insights. So this is great, all your applications. It shows you how many successful sign-ins have happened, and if anybody's failed to sign in, that can be really useful for troubleshooting, by the way. And it also gives you an idea of how popular a product is. And if a product's not popular and you realize, hey, I'm paying a lot of money for this, you might not be on the right license. All right. So there you have it, a quick tour of Microsoft Entra or Azure AD Mark II, if you will. Hey, listen, I really hope you enjoyed this week. And if you did, bump the like button. It really does make a difference to my channel. If you got questions, hey, get them down below. I love questions. All right. And if you've not subscribed, please bump that subscribe button, ring the bell up there, and you'll be notified of any new updates. That's it for this time. I really appreciate you dropping by, and nice to see you. Stay safe. I'll see you next time. Cheers. Hey, thanks so much for dropping by today. Here's a couple of videos that you may enjoy, and while you're here, go ahead, click on the subscribe button and you won't miss out.